There are moments when silence feels like a punishment. When you've prayed until your voice cracked, cried until your eyes gave up, and waited until time itself mocked your hope. In those moments, it's easy to believe that God has forgotten you, that your cries were lost in the heavens. But what if the silence is an absence? What if the delay is a divine setup? What if your answer is closer than you think? Tonight, let me tell you a story, one that will speak to your soul, shake your doubt, and remind you, when it feels like you're at the end, heaven is often just beginning to speak. Rain lashed against the cracked windows of a tiny one-bedroom apartment. Inside, dim light flickered from a single lamp in the corner, casting long shadows across the walls like specters of worry. Naomi sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by unopened bills, eviction notices, and a calendar that reminded her she was 3 months behind on life. She stared blankly at the ceiling, whispering the same prayer she had spoken for weeks. God, please. Just a sign. Just something. It had been a year since her world turned upside down. A promising job offer fell through. Her savings vanished in the blink of a medical emergency. Friends who once cheered her on now watched her like a slow-moving car crash, too embarrassed to look, too entertained to look away. But worst of all, she couldn't hear God anymore. Naomi had once been a woman of unshakable faith, the type who encouraged others, the one who quoted scriptures in storms. But when her own storm came, the verses felt dry, and the silence from heaven began to scream. She applied for over 100 jobs. No replies. Sent countless messages for help. Ignored. The walls of her faith were cracking, and the voices in her mind were loud. God doesn't care. If he did, he wouldn't let you suffer like this. You're on your own. And still, every night, she prayed. One night, as thunder groaned overhead, Naomi finally broke. She dropped to her knees, fists clenched, tears pouring freely. I've done everything right, she cried. I stayed loyal, I helped others, I waited, I believed. And now, I'm humiliated, abandoned, empty. Why are you silent, God? Why won't you answer? Silence. She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. Maybe you've already given up on me. That night, she fell asleep on the cold floor, her heart splintered into pieces too small to count. But what Naomi didn't know, what she couldn't see, was that something had shifted. In another part of the city, a man named Elijah scrolled aimlessly through his phone. A successful entrepreneur, a God-fearing man, and, more importantly, a stranger to Naomi. But that night, something strange began happening. As he lay in bed, he felt a sharp, unexplained tug on his spirit. A name flashed through his mind. Naomi. He didn't know a Naomi. Had never worked with one. Never even heard the name recently. But the impression wouldn't leave him. It echoed like thunder in his chest. Check your old resumes. Look for Naomi. He rubbed his temples. God, is this you? He got up, walked his home office, and opened an old folder of applications he had reviewed 2 years ago when building his nonprofit. There, third from the top, was a resume. Naomi R. Fields, former youth counselor, volunteer coordinator, community outreach specialist. He clicked on the file. Her cover letter had passion. Her work had depth. And then he noticed the date, exactly 1 year ago, the same week Naomi's downward spiral began. She was the one I skipped over, because we had already filled a role, he murmured. Something about the timing struck him like lightning. His hands trembled as he reached for phone. Meanwhile, Naomi woke to a phone vibrating under her limp hand. The screen glowed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something, a whisper, maybe nudged her. Hello? Her voice was hoarse. Hi, is this Naomi Fields? The voice on the other end was cautious, but kind. Yes. My name is Elijah. I run a faith-based community outreach center. I found your resume, and I think you're the answer we've been praying for. Naomi sat up. I don't understand. We're expanding. Starting tomorrow, actually, and the truth is, I felt led, urgently led, to find someone with your background. I believe God placed you in my path. I know this is sudden, but would you consider coming in for a discussion today? Naomi was silent. Then came the tears. But this time, they weren't out of desperation. They were out of awe. Sometimes, God answers you not in thunder, but in whispers that travel through the hearts of strangers. While you feel abandoned, He's aligning timelines. While you cry out in the dark, He's stirring someone awake across the city, across the world, across dimensions of purpose. Naomi almost gave up the night before her answer arrived. How close have you been to your breakthrough when you chose to stop praying? This isn't just a story. This is a divine echo. Your waiting is not wasted. Your silence is not empty. And your answer? It may already be in motion. Don't give up now, because your answer is closer than you think. Naomi stared at the modest glass door of the Community Outreach Center, its letters worn with time, but full of quiet promise. The Vine Project. Her heart thudded in her chest like a warning drum. What if this wasn't real? What if she had imagined the voice, the call, the opportunity? But as the door creaked open, she was greeted not by indifference, but warmth. Elijah, the man who had called, stood tall with eyes that seemed to see far deeper than the surface. "Naomi?" he asked, extending his hand. "I've been waiting." She smiled nervously and stepped inside. The center was alive with quiet activity. Volunteers sorting donations. A few mothers huddled in the corner with children on their laps. On the wall was a mural of a tree with names painted onto its branches. Testimonies, Elijah later explained, of those whose lives had been changed within these walls. They sat in a room lined with bookshelves, and Elijah spoke gently. "I know this might feel sudden, maybe even unreal, but I believe God has been preparing this moment for longer than either of us realize." Naomi hesitated. "I almost gave up last night," she admitted, voice cracking. "I felt so forgotten." Elijah nodded. "That's when the enemy pushes hardest, right before God shows up." He slid a contract across the table, a position far greater than she expected. Program director. Housing assistance included. A fresh start. Naomi's hand trembled as she signed her name, sealing a door that had once seemed permanently shut. But little did she know, this was only the beginning. In the weeks that followed, Naomi stepped into her role, like someone returned to life after a long slumber. She coordinated food drives, built new youth programs, and even started a weekly women's circle for those who, like her, had almost given up. Her voice, once choked with despair, became a beacon for others in darkness. And yet, one evening, as she locked up the center, Naomi saw something strange. A little girl stood across the street, staring at her, pale dress, barefoot, silent. Naomi called out, but the girl turned and vanished into the alley. The image haunted her that night. Who was she? Why had she looked so familiar? She couldn't sleep, so she prayed. And in that stillness, something stirred within her, an echo of an old prayer, one she'd long forgotten. "Lord, if you ever bring me out of this, use me to help the ones the world forgets. Use me to find the ones hiding in the corners of life." The next day, Naomi mentioned the child to Elijah, who frowned. "We've had reports of a little girl in the neighborhood. No one knows her name. People say she vanishes before anyone can reach her. Some believe she doesn't even exist." Naomi felt a chill. "I don't believe in ghosts," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Elijah looked thoughtful. "Maybe she's not a ghost. Maybe she's a message." That week, Naomi made her mission to find the girl. Days passed. Then one rainy evening, as she stood at a street corner handing out care packages, she saw her again, standing beneath a broken street lamp, drenched but still calm. Naomi ran to her, but again the girl turned and disappeared. This time Naomi followed, down alleyways, through puddles, past graffiti-covered walls, until she reached an abandoned building. Inside, silence wrapped her like a shroud. The air was thick with dust, and something else, grief. "Hello," Naomi called. "Is someone here?" No answer, but then a faint sob. She moved deeper, phone light cutting through the gloom, until she found her. Not the girl, but a young woman, frail, curled in a corner, holding a tiny child wrapped in a soaked towel. The girl Naomi had seen was the woman's daughter. The woman, Mira, had been hiding there for weeks after escaping an abusive relationship. No one knew. No one came. No one cared. Until now. Naomi helped them back to the center, fed them, gave them clothes, called the necessary services. She sat with Mira for hours, holding her hand, whispering, "You're safe now." Later that night, as Naomi stared at the stars from the center's rooftop, the wind whispered through the trees. "You asked me to use you," it seemed to say, "and I did." Naomi smiled, tears sliding down her cheeks. Suddenly, the suffering, the silence, the weight, it all made sense. Each unanswered prayer, each sleepless night, had been shaping her into someone who wouldn't walk past the forgotten, who wouldn't be afraid to chase ghosts if it meant finding the living. Her story wasn't about the pain. It was about the purpose birthed from it. A month passed. Then, too, Mira found a job through the center's employment program. Her daughter, whom Naomi had first seen in that eerie moment, was enrolled in school. And then came the day when Naomi stood before a crowded church service to share her testimony. She didn't sugarcoat it. She talked about the nights she felt God had turned away, the mornings she didn't want to wake up, the betrayal, the lack, the fear. But then her voice grew steady. "I stand here today, not because I was strong, but because God was. And I realize now he wasn't silent. He was preparing the answer. The delay wasn't rejection. It was alignment. And your answer," she said, her eyes sweeping the crowd, "your answer may be closer than you think." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. After the service, a woman approached her, trembling. "I was going to give up today. I said to God, 'Show me you still care.' And then you spoke." Naomi embraced her, heartful. She had become the very answer she once begged for, not just for herself, but for many. You may not see it now. You may feel like the heavens are brass, your prayers bouncing off the ceiling. But don't you dare give up, because while you're breaking, God is building. While you're crying, he's orchestrating. While you're waiting, he's aligning people, places, and moments that will one day collide into a miracle so precise, you'll weep at how close he always was. Naomi's story isn't fiction. It's a reflection, a mirror to your own journey. So hold on, keep praying, keep trusting, because your answer, your redemption, your breakthrough, your divine turnaround is closer than you think.